I started working in VR and AR as my research project because actually it wasn't VR to begin with. It was actually about immersive experiences, and it was for public spaces. And we had done an installation that was more physical, but we needed something to have a storytelling content that was very immediate, visceral, and evocative. And so actually VR became kind of the only medium that we could do it in, considering that our big screen was like a magnet, and we needed something that had an attraction to people in the opposite way. So it actually just kind of gravitated towards VR. Also combined with the fact that it was a portable installation that was traveling to different locations, so it needed to be small and robust. So it was, yeah, the perfect storytelling medium to work with. So I think VR and AR have very different roles in terms of immersive experiences. And also the interaction principles and even the content and the value of both are very different. So in general, before even starting any experience, you kind of ask what makes the most sense. And AR, of course, is great in the terms of it uses our physical environment. And if we can use that to add value because it means something more, for example, doing something within your home or within an environment that you know intimately and then creating new values for that, is a whole nother set of ideals and also a whole nother set of interaction principles that you should use for that, versus VR, which is very different in terms of it's very immersive, but you're being brought to a new place, and so you need to understand like how to perceive it. So essentially, creating the stage for them to understand, okay, who am I, what am I doing here, why am I here? And in this case, it also takes different amounts of time for both as well, which is important. And the interaction principles for VR, especially if it requires controllers or things, you have to take into consideration that people might not know exactly how to be intuitive about this. So understanding how to do that versus with AR, where if you move your hand, that's a gesture that you know in everyday life. And so I think both of them are very interesting, but two different approaches. And it's just from the very beginning, you basically have to ask, does this which one makes the most sense for whatever it is that you're trying to create for people. For me, there's something that has to be quite theatrical about it. It needs to make sense for what it is, and since it's such an immersive material, it needs to have a combination of music, sound, visuals, presence, for people to really understand where they are and what they're doing and why that makes sense to them. For example, in the past we had books and novels, which was very immersive, and now as technology gets better, we have newer materials and mediums to work with. And so the newest materials should really build upon the past and not try to replicate them, but do something more that goes beyond that. So really taking in all the elements of theater, essentially, even. And then also at the heart of it, keeping the user at the core and making sure the user experience is really revolved around them. Yes, I do think that it's going to have a stronger influence. I mean, we're seeing quite a lot of people now starting to create immersive experiences, especially because today younger people want to connect with their brands. We have kids who've grown up with the internet, for example, who have carved out their identities online, are starting to now expect that also of the companies that they buy things from and the services that they want. So VR, AR helps make experiences personal, and it creates a moment that's a bit magical for people. And so I do think that marketing activities will start considering this. In the same way, the trend of transparency is coming across more and more. We'll see more and more opportunities for people to learn in immersive ways and engage in meaningful ways as well. It's really important that it's meaningful. I like to look at young people who've grown up with the internet, because this is our market now, and this is they're seeing the world in a different way. For example, if you see a kid ring a doorbell, they'll use their thumb because they're so used to swiping with their phones. So next generation marketing, I think, really takes into consideration what these people who've grown up with the internet, who've understood, who've been able to interact with their whole world and kind of curate their content, really try to understand what they want and their desires. And I think in the past it was more passive. in the way that, as marketers, you would create content and then you kind of sell it to people and tell them like, this is what you want. But now you can actually work with the people. Maybe there'll be more AI, of course, as well involved in that. But hopefully it'll create experiences and products and services for these younger people, which will have some sort of connection to them, as opposed to being something that you just buy, something that you can actually grow with.